In the heart of a quiet African village surrounded by rolling hills and mango trees, there lived a woman named Neom. She was known by all, not just for her skill as a village midwife, but for the way her laughter could lift the mood of even the saddest soul. Neom was married to Kweku, a respected schoolteacher whose deep voice and gentle nature made him a favorite among both children and elders. Together, they were the couple everyone looked up to. People often said, if your marriage is even half as peaceful as Neom and Kweku's, you are truly blessed. Their home was full of warmth and love. The walls were old, but they were painted bright, and Neom kept fresh flowers near the window. Their 2 children, Omo and Kisha, were lively, always running around the compound with big smiles and dusty feet. Every morning, Neom would wake before the sun to prepare breakfast. Kweku would sit at the table, sipping tea, reading the newspaper, and complimenting her cooking. "I don't know how I got lucky," he'd often say, grinning at her with sleepy eyes. Neom would laugh, brushing flour off her apron. "It's the gods who brought you to me. Now eat before your tea gets cold." They had their routines, their small jokes, and evening walks when the air was cool and the village was quiet. Kweku would often carry Kisha on his shoulders while Neom held Omo's hand, telling them bedtime stories as they walked. To the world, Neom's life looked perfect. But slowly, cracks began to show. Kweku started coming home late. At first, he blamed it on extra lessons for the older students preparing for exams. Neom believed him, why wouldn't she? He was her husband, her best friend, the father of her children. But then the late nights became more frequent. He stopped joining her for evening walks. Some nights, he didn't even eat the food she prepared. He would wave her off with a tired smile, saying, "I already ate at school, love. Just tired today." Neom tried not to worry. "Maybe he's just stressed," she told herself. "He's carrying a lot these days." Still, something felt off. He began locking his phone, something he had never done before. He laughed less. And when Neom looked into his eyes, sometimes she saw a distance, a space she couldn't cross, no matter how hard she tried. One night, while folding clothes, Neom found a strange perfume scent on his shirt. It wasn't hers. It was strong, sweet, and unfamiliar. Her hands froze. She picked up the shirt and sniffed again. Yes, definitely perfume. Neom's heart started to race, but she shook the feeling away. "Maybe one of his students hugged him," she whispered, forcing a smile onto her face. "They love him." But deep inside, something was shifting. She started watching him closely, noticing how quickly he changed his clothes after arriving home. How he avoided eye contact. How he smiled at her less and sighed more. One day, while cooking, Neom's friend Ajua stopped by. She was the kind of woman who always spoke her mind. "Sister," Ajua said, sitting on the kitchen stool, "I don't like what I'm hearing around the market. They say Kweku is often seen around that widow's shop near the river road. You know the one I mean." Neom's hand tightened around her cooking spoon. She forced a laugh, but her voice cracked. "Ajua, please. People love to talk. My husband. Kweku. Never." Ajua raised her brows but didn't argue. That night, Neom lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The house was quiet, too quiet. And in that silence, doubt began to grow. Was her perfect life just an illusion? Neom woke up before the sun, her eyes heavy, her chest tight. She had barely slept. Every creak of the wooden house, every shift in the wind outside had her turning to see if Kweku was home. He wasn't. He had come home late again, muttered something about a staff meeting, and gone straight to bed without even kissing her forehead. The distance between them was no longer just emotional, it was now physical. He didn't reach for her at night. He didn't even hold her hand when they walked through the village on Sunday mornings. It was as if the love had drained out slowly, and only routine remained. Naom still cooked his favorite meals. Still laid out his shirts in the morning. Still helped the children pack their books for school. But everything she did now felt heavy, like she was moving through water. And that scent, that sweet, floral perfume, kept haunting her. She had smelled it again on his collar 2 days ago. She hadn't said anything. She couldn't. One afternoon, Naom was grinding pepper in the kitchen when her son, Omo, came running in. "Mama," he shouted, "that woman with the red scarf came again." Naom turned sharply. "What woman?" "The one who gave me a sweet the other day," he said innocently. "She came to Papa's school and they were laughing." She touched his beard. Naom's heart stopped. "Did she say anything to you?" Omo shrugged. "No. Papa told me to wait in the staff room. Then she left. But she had shiny earrings and long nails. She smelled like flowers." Naom's hand slipped, and the peso fell from her grip, clattering to the floor. She knelt to pick it up, her fingers shaking. That evening, she tried to stay calm as she served dinner. Kweku barely looked up from his plate. He ate in silence and got up halfway, saying, "I have papers to mark." Naom watched him walk away. She cleaned the dishes slowly, her mind racing. The children were asleep by 8. The house was silent again. She sat outside for a while, staring up at the stars, remembering the nights when Kweku used to hold her hand and tell her stories about his dreams. Now, she barely recognized the man he had become. The wind whispered through the trees, as if trying to speak to her. She closed her eyes and whispered a prayer to her ancestors. "If there's something I need to see, show me. Let me know the truth." The next morning, the chance came. Adwa ran into her compound, breathless. "Naom, listen, don't ask questions. That woman, the one with the red scarf, she's in your house." Naom's heart pounded. "What?" "She thinks you've gone to the market. I saw her sneaking in just now, from the back." Naom didn't even put on her shoes. She grabbed her wrapper and ran, her legs trembling beneath her. As she approached the house, the door was half open. The silence inside was sharp. She stepped in, slowly. She could hear whispering. Then a laugh. A soft, familiar laugh, but not hers. She pushed open the bedroom door. And there they were. Kweku. And the woman with the red scarf. Sitting on the bed, his hand on her thigh. Naom froze. The room blurred. Her heart cracked. Kweku jumped to his feet. "Naom, wait." But she didn't wait. Her scream pierced the air. A sound of betrayal and heartbreak and rage. "Get out." Naom stood like a stone in the doorway, her eyes fixed on the two people before her. Her breathing was heavy, her chest rising and falling like a stormy tide. Kweku stammered, trying to speak, but the words wouldn't form. The woman with the red scarf grabbed her purse and slipped past Naom without a word, her head low, her perfume hanging in the air like an insult. Naom turned her gaze to her husband. "After everything, Kweku. After all I gave to you? Our children are in the next room." Kweku's face crumpled. "Naom, it's not what it looks like." "Not what it looks like," she shouted. "Then tell me what it is, Kweku. Make me understand why my husband is sitting on our bed with another woman." She didn't wait for an answer. She stormed out of the room and into the children's bedroom. They were still sleeping peacefully. She stared at them, her heart aching. Her hands trembled as she closed the door gently. Kweku followed her to the living room. "Please, let me explain." Naom turned to him with eyes full of fire. "You need to leave. Now." Kweku's shoulders dropped. He reached for her hand, but she stepped back. "You don't get to touch me. You lost that right the moment you let her into our home. But Neom, it was a mistake. Was it a mistake the first time? The second? Or every time you came home smelling like her? Her voice cracked, but her eyes remained firm. Get out, she whispered. Before I lose the little bit of strength I have left. Kweku lowered his head. He didn't argue anymore. He quietly picked up his shoes and walked out, closing the door behind him. Neom collapsed onto the floor, her body shaking, the weight of her heartbreak pressing down like heavy rain. She hugged herself tightly, tears spilling down her cheeks. The silence in the room was deafening. No words. No comfort. Just pain. She stayed like that until dawn. When the sun finally rose, its golden light fell gently across the floor, touching her face. Neom sat up slowly, her eyes red and swollen. Her body was sore. Her heart was in pieces. But she was still breathing. She stood, walked to the mirror, and looked at herself. I am still here, she whispered. Later that morning, her mother, Mama Ifi, arrived. She didn't say much. She simply walked in, sat beside Neom, and pulled her into her arms. Neom broke down again, sobbing like a child. My baby, Mama Ifi whispered, rocking her gently. Let it out. Cry if you must. But remember, even the strongest trees bend in the storm. They don't break. Neom wept for hours, then slept. When she woke, the house felt colder, emptier. Kweku was gone, but the damage he had done remained. She began moving around, slowly at first. Feeding the children. Cleaning up the room. She didn't tell them what had happened, just that their father had gone away for a while. That night, as she held her daughter in her arms, she whispered to herself, I may be broken, but I will not stay broken. Neom moved through her days like someone underwater. Everything felt slower, heavier. Her body worked, but her spirit was tired. But she refused to fall. Each morning, she forced herself to get up, even when her pillow was still wet from crying the night before. She braided Kisha's hair, packed almost school lunch, and waved goodbye with a tired smile. Then she would sit in silence for hours, staring at nothing, her thoughts spinning like dry leaves in the wind. Her mother, Mama Ifi, stayed with her every day. Mama, Neom whispered one evening, did Papa ever betray you? Mama Ifi didn't answer right away. She stirred the pot of soup gently and then said, no. But I've seen women who have survived worse and still stood tall. You are not the first woman to be wounded by love, my child. And you won't be the last. But you must decide, will this pain define you, or will it shape you into something stronger? Neom wanted to believe she could heal, but the nights were the hardest. In the quiet darkness, her mind replayed everything, Kweku's laughter with the other woman, the perfume, the betrayal, the broken trust. Sometimes she screamed into her pillow just to let the pain out. Then one day, Adjoa returned. Sister, she said, holding Neom's hand, you need to talk to someone. Not just friends. Someone who can help you heal. Go and see Mama Ya. She has helped many women through heartbreak. Neom was hesitant. She had always believed in handling things on her own. But now, she wasn't sure of anything anymore. So she went. Mama Ya lived at the edge of the village, a quiet woman with eyes that seemed to see through your soul. She listened as Neom poured out her story, every tear, every ache, every silent scream. When she finished, Mama Ya simply said, good. You've started. Healing begins the moment we tell the truth out loud. Neom began visiting her weekly. At first, she only cried. Then, slowly, she began to talk. Talk about the fear of being alone. Talk about how Kweku made her feel invisible. Talk about how she had forgotten herself in trying to be the perfect wife. And Mama Ya would nod, listening with kindness. One day, Mama Ya asked, "Neom, who are you when you're not someone's wife?" The question stunned her. She didn't know the answer. But that question planted a seed. Neom started doing little things for herself. Reading again. Sitting by the river with her feet in the water. Laughing with her children even if her heart still hurt. She journaled every night. Wrote down her fears. Her memories. Her anger. Her hope. One evening, she looked at herself in the mirror and said softly, "You are enough, Neom. You are still enough." The children noticed the change too. "Mama, you're smiling again," Omo said one morning. Neom hugged him close. "Yes, my love. I'm trying." It didn't mean the pain had disappeared. No. It was still there, like a scar. But Neom was learning how to live with it, without letting it control her. She had lost something precious. But she had found something powerful in return. Herself, Kweku had not known emptiness until he stood outside the home he once called his own, holding a bag of clothes and regret. He walked aimlessly through the village that first night, not knowing where to go. He ended up at his younger cousin's small hut on the far edge of town. The cousin didn't ask questions, just offered him a mat and a cup of water. But sleep didn't come easily to Kweku. For the first time, he saw himself clearly, not as a respected teacher or a beloved husband, but as a man who had shattered a woman's trust. A man who had broken the very thing that once gave him strength. Days passed. No calls from Neom. No messages. Not even from the children. He would pass the school playground and see Omo playing. But he stayed hidden. He knew he had no right. The silence from Neom spoke louder than any words ever could. So Kweku began searching for answers. Not from Neom, she had already given him everything. It was time for him to look within. He walked into the small chapel in the village and sat with Pastor Kojo, the one man who had married him and Neom years ago. Kweku confessed everything, the affair, the betrayal, the shame. Pastor Kojo listened quietly, his face calm. When Kweku finished, the pastor simply said, "Healing starts with honesty, but redemption comes with sacrifice. Are you ready for that?" Kweku nodded, tears in his eyes. From that day forward, he changed. He stopped going to the woman with the red scarf. In fact, he never spoke to her again. Whatever that was, it ended the moment he saw the pain in Neom's eyes. He began attending sessions with the pastor every week. He volunteered at the local orphanage, tutoring children in the evenings. He helped neighbors fix broken fences and offered to teach free classes on weekends. Word began to spread, Kweku is not the same. Still, Neom said nothing. Until one morning, Kweku left a note at her door. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just want to say thank you for the years you loved me, even when I forgot how to love you back." Neom didn't reply. But he kept showing up, not at her door, but around the village. Quietly. Humbly. He dropped off school books for the children. Left bags of food at the corner of her compound without signing his name. Fixed the broken hinges on the village well that Neom always used. One afternoon, as Neom walked through the market, she saw something that made her pause. Kweku was sitting on a low stool, helping a blind old man peel cassava. The man was laughing, and Kweku's face was calm, full of a peace Neom hadn't seen in a long time. Her heart didn't leap. It didn't melt. But it softened. Later that week, Kweku dropped off another note. "Even if you never take me back, I will keep honoring the good you brought into my life. You helped me become a better man. For that, I'll always be grateful." Neom read the note 3 times. That night, she didn't cry. She didn't smile either. But for the first time in a long while, she thought about the word forgiveness and didn't flinch. The sun rose over the village with a soft golden glow. Naomi sat on her veranda, a cup of warm millet porridge in her hands, watching the morning light spread across the trees. The world felt quiet, but her heart was anything but. For weeks now, Kweku had been trying. Not with empty words, but with small, consistent actions. He no longer came to her door, no longer begged. He simply did the work. Naomi had watched in silence. Watched him help the elders without being asked. Watched him care for children who want his. Watched him listen more than he spoke. The man who had broken her heart was changing. Or maybe he was just becoming the man he was always meant to be. But the question still echoed in her mind. Could she ever trust him again? Mama Ify sat beside her, threading beads into her necklace. "Child," she said gently, "you're holding pain and hope in the same hand. That is not easy." Naomi looked down at her porridge. "Mama, if I forgive him, does it mean I am weak?" "No," Mama Ify replied. "It means you are strong enough to heal. But forgiveness must come with wisdom. Don't go back just because he's sorry. Go back only if your soul feels safe." Naomi nodded, but her mind remained tangled. That night, she sat with her journal, her fingers trembling. She wrote, "I don't know what love is anymore. I know what betrayal feels like. I know what loneliness feels like. But I also know what it feels like to hope. Am I foolish to still hope? Or brave?" The next day, she visited Momaya again. The wise woman looked at her kindly. "So, your husband is changing?" "Yes." "And you feel something growing again in your heart?" Naomi hesitated. "Maybe. I see him trying. I see the way the children still adore him. I feel something shift, but I'm scared." "Fear is natural," Momaya said. "Your heart remembers the wound. But if you feel even a small desire to rebuild, you must ask yourself, can you build something new, not on the broken pieces, but beside them?" Naomi left with more clarity, though the road ahead was still foggy. That evening, she asked the children if they wanted to see their father. Their eyes lit up instantly. "Yes, Mama. Please." She watched their excitement with a heavy but thoughtful heart. The next day, she sent a message through Adjoa for Kweku to meet her at the large baobab tree in the center of the village at sunset. When he arrived, Naomi was already sitting there, legs crossed, arms folded. Her face was calm, but her eyes held oceans. Kweku approached slowly. "Thank you for calling me." "I didn't call you to come back," Naomi said quickly. "I called you to listen." "I'm here," he said. She looked at him long and hard. "I was broken," she began. "Not just by your betrayal, but by the way you treated our love like it was something small. You walked over everything we built together like it was nothing." Kweku swallowed, his eyes downcast. "I wanted to hate you," she continued. "I wanted to erase you. But I couldn't. You are the father of my children. You were the man who once held me when I cried after losing our first baby. You were the man who danced with me in the rain when we had nothing but love and hope." Kweku wiped his eyes. "Naomi, I destroyed something beautiful. I know that. And I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I will spend the rest of my life trying to earn it." Naomi looked away for a moment, then back at him. "I'm willing to talk. To see if something new can be built from this ruin. But understand me clearly, Kweku, I'm not the same woman you betrayed. I've changed. I've grown. And if we do this, it's not going to be for comfort. It will be for truth." Kweku nodded. "I wouldn't want anything less." They sat in silence for a while as the sun dipped behind the hills, turning the sky orange and pink. Before they left, Naomi said, "We'll go for counseling. Together. And we'll move slowly. For the children. For us." And for whatever future might still be possible. Kweku smiled faintly. Even if we don't get back what we had, I'll be grateful just to walk beside you again. In the weeks that followed, Neom and Kweku began attending counseling sessions at the church, led by Pastor Kojo and Momaya. It wasn't easy. The first few meetings were tense, filled with tears and silence. But they talked. Neom spoke of the depth of her hurt. Kweku listened, not to respond, but to truly understand. He didn't defend himself anymore. He accepted the pain he caused. They both agreed to set boundaries. Kweku would stay in his cousin's house for now. Their focus would be on rebuilding trust, not rushing into love. Neom also kept seeing Momaya on her own. The healing she needed wasn't just about Kweku, it was about herself. She began volunteering again, helping young mothers in the village. She started a small group for women to share their stories of pain, of strength, of rising. The community noticed. And slowly, so did she. One Saturday morning, as she washed clothes in the compound, Kweku arrived with fresh mangoes and helped fetch water without being asked. The children cheered and hugged him. Neom watched quietly. Her heart didn't race, but it didn't ache either. Something was changing. Later that evening, as they all sat together eating boiled yam and garden egg stew, Neom looked at Kweku and said softly, "Thank you." He looked up, surprised. "For showing up. And not running." He nodded. "I'm here. For as long as it takes." She smiled faintly. Not because everything was perfect, but because for the first time in a long while, it felt possible. 1 year later, the village no longer whispered about Neom and Kweku. Not because people had forgotten what happened, but because something more powerful had replaced the gossip: respect. Their story had become something deeper than scandal. It had become a lesson. A path that others could quietly watch and learn from. Neom stood by the window, braiding her daughter Kisha's hair. Outside, Omo was helping his father carry a basket of books to the small learning center they had opened in the village square, a project born from Kweku's new heart and Neom's renewed strength. Things hadn't gone back to the way they were. They had gone forward instead. After months of counseling, long conversations, and clear boundaries, Neom had agreed to let Kweku move back into the family home, but slowly, one step at a time. At first, he only visited during the day, spent time with the children, helped in the compound, and left before nightfall. It wasn't about punishing him. It was about trusting herself. And when Neom finally asked him to stay one evening, it was because she wanted it, not because she missed the routine, or because the village expected it, but because her heart had made peace with the past. Their relationship looked different now. They had rules. They had check-ins. They had agreed never to go silent again, no matter how hard the truth might be. Kweku now respected Neom's independence. He supported her women's circle meetings, often helping to organize chairs or bring snacks for the guests. He became known not just as a husband trying to make amends, but as a man who changed. He no longer feared admitting his mistakes. He no longer needed to be perfect. He just needed to be present. And he was. One evening, while the children played by the fire, Neom and Kweku sat under the big mango tree in the yard, watching the stars blink into view. "I never thought we'd reach this place," Kweku said softly. Neom smiled, sipping from her cup. "Neither did I." "Do you still think about it?" he asked. That night. She took a deep breath. "Sometimes. But not the way I used to. Before, it felt like a wound that wouldn't close. Now, it's a scar. It's there. But it doesn't bleed anymore." He nodded. "I still carry shame." Neom looked at him, her expression calm. "And I carry memory. But I've learned that healing doesn't mean erasing what happened. It means choosing what we build after it." Kweku gently reached for her hand. Thank you, Naom, for not giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason to. She didn't say anything at first. She just watched their fingers intertwine. Then she whispered, you didn't earn your way back with grand gestures. You earned it by showing up every single day, even when it was hard. Even when I ignored you. Even when I hated you. He smiled. I never stopped loving you. Naom turned toward him. Love isn't enough. It never is. But when love is honest, and matched with action, it becomes something powerful. They sat in silence, listening to the soft laughter of their children. That weekend, they held a gathering at the village hall. It was Naom's idea. To host a story night, where couples could come together and share lessons from their own marriages and hardships. Not to expose anyone, but to encourage open hearts. She stood in front of a small crowd, strong, proud, no longer ashamed of her story. My husband betrayed me, she began. And I lost myself for a while. But through pain, I found my own strength. I realized I am more than someone's wife. I am a woman, a mother, a sister, a healer. Kweku stood beside her, not to defend himself, but to stand accountable. I hurt the person I love most, he said. And I've learned that forgiveness is not a right, it's a gift. One you receive only after you've done the work within yourself. They received no applause. No cheers. Just nods. Tears. Quiet understanding. After the event, couples lingered to talk with them. Some whispered thanks. Some simply hugged Naom without a word. Their story had become more than just theirs. It had become a mirror for others. That night, back home, the family sat around a small anniversary cake the children had secretly baked with Mama Ife's help. It was a little burnt, the frosting lopsided, but Naom thought it was the most beautiful cake she had ever seen. Amo handed her a handmade card. Kisha giggled as she sang a song she had written just for the occasion. Then Kweku handed her a folded letter. Naom opened it and read silently. I vow to keep choosing you. Not just in the light of our joy, but in the shadow of our mistakes. I vow to honor your strength. And never again take it for granted. You are not my other half. You are whole, on your own. And I am lucky to walk beside you. She looked up, her eyes glassy but soft. I don't know what tomorrow will bring, she said. But I'm willing to face it. With you. One honest day at a time. Kweku leaned forward and kissed her forehead. They didn't speak much after that. They didn't need to. The sounds of their children's laughter filled the air. The stars above seemed brighter. The night breeze felt gentle, as if blessing this new chapter. Naom sat back in her chair, holding Kweku's hand, and whispered to herself. We are not perfect. But we are whole. And we are still writing our story.